Hey everybody, this is Marian Cowing Owen.
And this is David Owen.
And this is You Show Me Yours, the podcast where a married couple talks about the movies and TV that they loved before the first date. And today I was made to watch Congo.
Yes, you were. Congo is, of course, the 1995 Frank Marshall directed Michael Crichton novel-based movie that came out to much fanfare and was something of a flop. If you haven't seen it, I'll give you a real brief synopsis, and the rest of it will sort of come out as we go. Essentially, an expedition of mixed purpose is heading into the Congo. Everybody has their own sort of motives that are on this expedition, and they are going to free a talking ape, a talking gorilla, to find a legendary lost city and to find a lost ex-fiancé, and also to find a diamond that is pure enough to somehow fuel the laser of a communication satellite. I don't know. But once they get there, things go awry, and it is a sort of an action adventure romp with tons of cameos and lots of gore and crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just a big dumb adventure, and it's not really what you would expect, but I still think it's a pretty darn good movie. So
I don't know if it is what I expected.
Right. It's not what you would expect.
Yeah.
For sure. And we'll get into that. Actually, speaking of what you might expect, we did a little experiment for this episode where we actually recorded our sort of musings on the movie, Marian what she thought it would be, and me what I remembered of it, having not seen it for 20 years, and created a little time capsule. So we're going to throw it to Marian and David 2 hours ago before we watched Congo, and we're going to see exactly what we thought Congo was going to be. So, Marian.
Yes.
Before we watch 1995's Congo, why don't you just tell me anything you know about this movie?
Oh, gosh. I don't think that I know anything. I can speculate based on some context clues. You told me that this is Michael Crichton, right?
Yes.
Okay, so honestly, I'm essentially imagining Jurassic Park,
but
in a jungle with. You told me this is not Anaconda, but I'm still imagining snakes. At some point, does a big snake eat somebody? I feel like that needs to happen.
I guess we
I'm gonna
point.
predict. I'm gonna predict that. Yeah, there's a scientist that nobody listens to, and actually possibly several scientists that nobody listened to, and someone who is obsessed with making money. Is there going to be a deforestation plot? We got to knock down the trees to build a mini mart or whatever. And then there's something where nature finds a way to outsmart humans. And there's going to be some squirrely little scientists. I'm imagining like Luis Guzman type,
Sure.
Who meet an unpleasant end.
Sure. Yeah, that all sounds plausible.
Okay.
Now, having seen this movie, I will tell you what I remember. I probably haven't seen this movie since like 96 when it came out on VHS, 95, 96.
VHS, man.
Yeah.
Ooh.
What I remember is Amy. Amy is a talking gorilla that she does sign language, but she gets an apparatus that interprets her sign language. So then she has a voice, like a robot voice that's like, Amy, love, Peter, Amy, sea, frog, whatever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's that. I remember that. I remember there are silver or like white evil gorillas. And I remember Ernie Hudson not quite committing to his English accent. Whoa. Hey, sorry, we just had a little cat catastrophe here. Yeah, little catastrophe. Sorry.
Thank you. Like when it's right there, you got to take it.
Yes. And I remember Tim Curry overcommitting to his accent. We're having some weird audio stuff, but I think it's just our headphones. So hopefully you're hearing this. Yeah, like that's the city of Zange, you know, like just way over the top.
What country
I'm
is that?
from Romania or whatever. You know, like I don't remember his exact accent, but it's wow. We just have a cat that is into everything right now. Sorry, she's all hyped up.
Is it kind of an accent like mine where he drifts from 6 countries to in one sentence?
No, I think he's pretty
Okay. It's consistent, just
it's
over the top.
Yeah, it's pretty consistent, but over the top.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I remember. So I remember a lot of other things, little story points and stuff, but I'm just like the things that I remember that I think are interesting. That's what I remember about this movie the most.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll see how any of that comes true.
Okay.
Any of your predictions come true, or how my memory was on the finer points. Okay, so we're back to the present. Let's evaluate. How did your predictions do?
Pretty spot on in some areas.
Some
pretty
areas, yes.
totally off the mark in others. There was a snake,
Yes,
but it got chopped up and didn't eat anybody.
Small snake got chopped.
I thought that was foreshadowing. I thought that was going to be like a snake would come back and
like,
to that exact guy.
That guy
like,
was
you know, but no. So that was a missed opportunity. But definitely somebody obsessed with money.
Yes.
Definitely nature outsmarts humans, although humans of like centuries ago probably, but
sure.
Definitely a squirrely little scientist who met an unpleasant end.
Quite.
Not quite as unpleasant of a person as Newman is in Jurassic Park, but still kind of a, you know, you could see from the beginning like where where his heart was going. Other than that, that was not quite what I expected. I don't know if I could have predicted what we just saw.
No, I don't think anyone could have. Not at all. I think, you know, my recollections were relatively spot on. So, you know, we'll see how this feature goes. I think it's a fun little time capsule to do. We'll see going forward. But we're going to just break into the rest of the episode now. So let's move on to the rest of Congo. This movie is a lot. There's a long period in the beginning where not a lot happens. It's like a getting there kind of thing.
It really takes a long time to get the crew together and ramp up. And there's these like early obstacles that have to be conquered before you can get to the real, you know, and that's a lot.
So I would say it really feels like somebody translating a book to a movie and not understanding that like a book needs to be a certain length. And, you know, you're padding some of that out with the journey, and you can make the journey more interesting. And they do some of this in the movie, but it's a time where you can introduce people to your characters and you can start to learn their motivations. But all of it could have been tighter, for sure.
I feel like, a book has to be a certain length and a movie has to be a certain length. And the movie is by definition shorter than the book.
Yeah.
But also sometimes things that take a page in a book take 10 minutes in a movie. And so you have to learn to kill your darlings, as they say.
Yeah, and sometimes things that take a sentence in a book can really be expanded upon in a movie. You know, big evil gorilla jumps down and beats up Homolka, Tim Curry's character.
I kept hearing that as Hunkamunka from the Beatrix Potter books.
Herkimer Homolka. I wrote his full name on our list, you know, but that's we'll get into that. That's a sentence, right? Like ape jumps down, smashes his face. You know, that's 2 or 3 minutes on screen, and you can pull it out, and you can, you know, the team has to parachute out of the plane. That's, you know, you can really stretch that out. And I think in places where they could have condensed, they didn't. In places where they could have stretched, they didn't take they did and they didn't. They, you know, they took some opportunities to stretch, took others not, and missed others. So yeah, it was kind of an uneven application. Yeah, I think there's a skill to bringing something longer form into a movie, so a play or a novel. Yeah. And I or a whole like season of a television show, if you're trying to somehow, for some reason, condense it into a movie. Yeah. And I think they drop the ball in some places, but yeah, just this top to bottom, this movie is just, it's full of crazy stuff. I'm just looking at my list and like, kind of attached to this, I wrote not enough action ? I think this movie makes you wait a long time, because people would call this an action adventure movie, but they really make you wait a long time for like the good action. There's a little bit of stuff here and there in the beginning. They drip in a little bit here and there. But yeah, I think they miss the opportunity to speed up a lot of the exposition and just get to it.
Well, yeah, some of the obstacles earlier on in the movie are more of the geopolitical corruption variety.
Yeah, like logistical and geopolitical.
I felt vaguely uncomfortable on behalf of every person living on the African continent by the way that the government of then Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo, is portrayed. Or was that where they were? I don't know. Anyway, wherever they landed, a car is blown up on a tarmac and everybody's just like, oh, okay, that was the president. All right, new government. Like, it was almost like black comedy, but very out of place. And it was, yeah. So it's a geopolitical action adventure fable about don't mess with Mother Nature. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. And some of that stuff in the beginning is a good source of some of the cameos that happen in this movie. The characters that just come on the screen for a minute or two. It starts off right off the bat with Bruce Campbell. In the very beginning, and that one's great. At the airport, we get what's his name?
I can't remember how to say
Joey. What is it? Pants?
Pantalone. He's just Joey Pants in my head.
Yeah, exactly.
Pantaleone,
I think.
Something.
Yeah. So you get him right off the beginning. You get Delroy Lindo as an African warlord.
That was fantastic.
Which was great.
That was pretty good.
Yeah. And they just kind of throw these at you, and none of those people were maybe as big in 95 as they would go on to become. But yeah, there's just a great set of cameos. Joe Don Baker plays Travis, like CW Travis or something. I can't remember his full name. Who owns the telecommunications company that is sending Dr. Karen Ross into the Congo to retrieve the diamond for the satellite. And Bruce Campbell plays Charles, who is Travis's son.
Which it kind of took me a little bit to figure that out. They sort of lowballed that relationship. But although I hope that a CEO would go for any of his employees, not even, especially the son. But
I mean, that was part of the storyline, is that he was more interested in getting the diamond than he was. And Dr. Ross keeps telling him multiple times, like, if I think for a second that you're sending me more for the diamond than for your son, then you're going to pay. Like, I'm going to figure out a way to make you pay. And spoilers, she does. But yeah, it's full of these great character actors and cameos in the first half. And, it's just, it's one of those things that you're just like, they drip them in at just the right timings to be like, oh yeah, I know that guy. And I feel like we don't get enough of that in a lot of modern movies, though we do get it. But when we do, it's more of like a wink at the camera. Like sometimes when they do it, like there's a literal scene like that in, I think it's Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, where Mark Hamill is in it and he's playing a character, and they literally stop the film and go and like right on the screen, hey kids, it's Mark Hamill, and like, that's how I felt when I first saw Bruce Campbell in this movie. Like, hey kids, it's Bruce Campbell. But I think a lot of movies do it in sort of like a winking at the audience way.
That's certainly how I felt with, what was the movie that we saw? Was it a Star Trek one where Tyler Perry is there?
Oh, yeah.
In the Galactic Senate or whatever.
He's like the president of the Galactic.
And I feel like we saw it in the theater and we just cracked up way too 100%. Loud for about 5 minutes at a time that we were not supposed to laugh because it was just so
it's like
out of the blue.
Kirk is about to be court-martialed.
Right.
and it just Tyler Perry's there, and you're just like, what?
We just died and probably missed some plot points.
Oh, probably. Yeah. But this movie has a lot of great actors in it. Surprisingly,
Yeah.
Laura Linney, whose character has like a real badass sort of turn. Like you already know she's ex-CIA, so you know she's legit. But like she gets all the good one-liners in the action scene, in the big set piece action scene in this movie, and like she is portrayed to be very competent and doesn't need saving from anybody, and in fact is doing the saving on the male lead multiple times. Like just a very kick-ass female character.
I gotta say, well, and the last time that we saw her on the podcast, she was oh my gosh, I don't even remember. She was the American in Love Actually. I don't remember her character's name.
Right.
Who's simping for the guy in her office but gives it all up to be with her mentally challenged brother. And now this character, like, I did not think that she could play this. Although apparently, I haven't seen Ozark, but apparently her character in Ozark is much more like this than the lady in Love Actually. Why can't I remember that character's name?
I can't remember it either. I've only seen that movie one time.
Anyway,
and like we said before, Tim Curry is in this movie doing such a '90s Tim Curry role.
Yeah,
just knocking it out of the park. I think now people appreciate what he was doing in the 90s and early 2000s in stuff like Home Alone 2 or this, or Legend, which we need to watch for the podcast, or of course Rocky Horror. I think people finally appreciate that now. But yeah, that's freaking Muppet Treasure Island. Like he just so many great roles.
I kind of feel like I was watching a beta version of Borat.
Kind of, yeah.
Maybe it's just the voice.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's a very, sort of ex-Soviet Republic kind of
which
accent.
Makes sense there. But when I hear Romania, I think of vampires.
Vampire.
So this was like Borat meets a vampire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's just over the top and just hamming it up to the degree that he can. He's not like the central. He's not the central bad guy. He's not even really a bad guy.
He's not even really a bad guy. He's just
He's just kind of he's a grifter who's looking for the city of Zinj.
He's kind of a means to an end. Like he's so this plot to get Amy back to the jungle, which comes up very quickly and is not really thought through very well, I thought. It's, great idea, but there's no funding. And he's like, I can supply the funding.
Yeah.
And then he turns out he can't, but they're already at the airport. And then Laura Linney sweeps in and is like, my company will pay all of it if you just let me stow away on your plane.
Yeah.
Because her expedition has to be secret, I guess, because they don't want anyone to know that they're looking for this diamond.
Well, they don't want anybody to know that people have died. So what Travis says in the beginning is that she needs to hitch a ride on an expedition that's already going to the Congo, because if they have to declare their expedition, then people will get suspicious, and they're because they would have to declare that they're going to rescue or check on this team that ceased communication, whatever. And the moment that there are dead bodies, then the border's closed, and yada yada yada. So she has to hitchhike, and these things are presented in a linear fashion, but you suppose are happening kind of the reverse order or simultaneously to how they actually appear on screen, because it starts with the expedition getting killed, and they then have to hitchhike on another expedition. Then you go into the introduction of Dr. Peter and Amy. Yeah,
I kind of thought those should have been intertwined more. Like, start out with the Bruce Campbell stuff and maybe with them getting killed, but then introduce Amy, and then back to the plan to get Laura Linney there.
Yeah.
And
or
it was,
even if you just said, if you started with 1 month ago, or 2 weeks ago, something. And then when you went to the Amy stuff, you went to, or you started with present day and you went 2 weeks ago for the Amy stuff. Sorry. I flip-flopped that. Yeah. So if the Amy stuff was 2 or 3 weeks ago and they, but Amy is a talking gorilla, and she has this apparatus, like I said in my prediction, that allows her to talk. And everybody's amazed by this, but she is having nightmares and drawing these drawings, painting these paintings of home, but she's also painting this eye, which Homolka sees in a article in Life magazine, and he is like, that's the eye of Zinj.
Clearly, she knows how to find it. She will lead me to the treasure.
To the diamonds or whatever.
Apologies to everybody in Romania.
Yes, please. Sorry.
We're going to keep doing it, but apologies anyway.
Yeah. So that whole plot he realizes she's depressed. She's missing home. And that's why she's having nightmares. And she's having nightmares specifically about the evil gorillas that we later see. So there's a tribe of good gorillas that live near the city of Zinj that obviously have had some run-ins or something with the bad gorillas. And we see evidence of that later by seeing dead gorilla bones
and stuff. Yeah.
And, they're saying like, no, these look like normal gorillas. I don't know. However, you haven't examined the body of an evil gorilla to really know how it's different. But
I gotta say, this guy does not seem like a good primatologist.
Well, sure. But also here's one of those things that I'm almost positive. I have not read the book. Mm-hmm. We're not going to do one of those where but one thing that I do know about having researched the book is that there's an implication in the book, if not outright, that they are crossbred with humans. Ooh. So they are obviously different. Right. So when you look at them, and even the depictions on the walls show regular apes and then a human with an ape head killing a person.
Yeah.
So the implication is there, even in the movie, that these apes are definitely different, but they don't give enough time to that. Like they take so much time with the buildup that the actual climax and the big action ending and the exposition of like the introduction of the actual evil gorillas and all this stuff, which we already know exists because they appear in the beginning of the movie, but they got to explain all that stuff, and they don't have enough time by the end to really give that its like due. And so, yeah, they don't focus in enough on like, oh, I can tell these are regular gorilla skulls because these other gorillas are like crossbred with humans in a way that makes it obvious to anyone who knows about primates just looking at their bodies that they're not real. They're not 100% gorilla.
Yeah.
So that's not quite enough.
Yeah. All we're told is that they trained them to be, guard dogs basically.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the guard dogs turned on their humans. That's all we get. But.
Yeah. That's kind of all we get. But yeah, so the expeditions combine, and yeah, it's a bit sloppy in the beginning. I mean, there's watching this movie, I can appreciate it. It's fun. I know what it is. So it is that sort of campy, it turns up on a lot of, not necessarily so bad it's good lists, but a lot of like, dumb movies from the 90s, like turn your brain off and watch this. And you're going to have fun, but don't think about it too much, 'cause it's not really a good movie. But it's a entertaining movie. Mm-hmm. And I still think that's what that is. And knowing it going in, yeah, I can turn my brain off and be like, yeah, this is a little ham-fisted in the beginning. This could have been handled better. The timelines could have been improved. You could have had the whole thing. Like, I love Delroy Lindo's appearance in this movie, but it's totally unneeded. Everything, the strife in the country. So they land in the whichever, it's Zimbabwe, wherever it is, it's whatever African country they start in. It's hard to track because at some point they're in Tanzania and it's different stuff. They land in this country. Joey Pants picks them up and is bringing them and he's trying to buy the gorilla, which is a great bit. Yeah. And Homolka's like, how much would you give me for the gorilla? And they're like, no, he's like, I'm just curious. Then that's when the limo blows up, the president's limo. He's not inside of it. And they say that was the problem, that he wasn't inside of it. So now they're going to have, a uprising because if they could have just killed him, this other government could have taken over. So they meet up then with Ernie Hudson's character, who is Monroe Kelly, Captain Monroe Kelly, he's doing the faintest of a British sort of accent. Like, He's in there. He's kind of doing the sort of British accent that people do who aren't really committing to a British accent. Like, oh, good old boy, old chap.
He took lessons at the Kevin Costner School
Yeah,
of voice acting.
Yeah, he's not always there, and
No.
and I don't think it helps him that when he's doing his English accent, he's softening his voice a bit. So when he misses it, he kind of goes back into his normal tone, and it kind of comes back around.
Well, it also does not help him that today in 2023, as I'm watching this, Idris Elba exists.
Right. Well, yeah. Like, yeah, there are amazing British actors that could have played this role now.
Yes. Or John Boyega, or Chiwetel, the guy, but especially Idris Elba. Because he did that movie not long ago where he beats up a lion.
Yes.
Like,
he would have been perfect for this role. So all of that stuff, you know, that and he immediately goes after the explosion. He's like, we got to get to another airport because we can't leave from here. So he loads them in a truck, and then they get stopped at a border crossing trying to get into wherever. And then they get taken to the local warlord that's Delroy Lindo. They get thrown in, some of them get thrown in jail. Half of them get thrown in jail. And then Monroe and Dr. Ross and Homolka get taken to the local warlord played by Delroy Lindo.
He commands them to have coffee and cake.
And then tells them, he tells them to have some coffee and sesame cake. And then he as soon as Homolka eats it, he says, "Stop eating my sesame cake." Sorry again for that. And he just spits it out. He spits it out into his hand. Because he doesn't like Homolka, because we find out Homolka has led a previous expedition into the Congo looking for the city of Zinj, and everybody died but him, some of them under suspicious circumstances, which he claims was just unfortunate suicide.
Which is, you would
this
kind
accent
of
keeps going.
You would kind of expect that to end up being related to the evil gorillas, but it wasn't.
We don't
so
know.
That's odd.
But yeah, all of that. And then they get, so they pay him off. They get put in a truck and they drive to a different airfield in Tanzania where they take off. All of that is 100% unnecessary. Yes, it robs me of two of my favorite cameos in the movie, but it's all unnecessary. 100%. That's like 20 minutes of the beginning of the movie that is just not needed at all, that could have been tacked back onto the end to expand the climax and just made a better movie.
You could still have the parachute scene.
Oh yeah, you still have all that.
You could even have Tim Curry going, push me out. Push me again. Which frankly, I would need to be pushed out.
Oh yeah. I keep doing Arnold instead. Harder. Push me harder. Again, drifting all over
Europe.
Europe
it's the European tour of accents. See, it happens to me. It happens to the best of us.
It happens to the best. Yeah. So all of that is unnecessary, and that's when I say, not enough action. Getting back to, I think, what started us down this road. Not enough action. Yeah, you could have gotten to that quicker. You could have expanded the interactions with the gorillas. There's a lot of stuff that feels like it's written in a book. And then just brought directly to the screen.
Well, not to mention that very few of these people through this journey are fazed by the sight of a gorilla just walking around with humans and clutching a teddy bear. And I would feel like that would
you could make a bigger deal of
get some attention. And this is the part where I felt really uncomfortable at the way that African countries were portrayed. And I know that many African countries are just notoriously unstable. But it felt like it was all being like not played for laughs exactly, but it didn't feel respectful at all. And I just thought, oh, there's a...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
I'm not comfortable with that.
So, somebody in the 90s wrote this, and Crichton, whenever this book is from the 80s or something, probably. Originally. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, it's similar to, and so this came out the same year as Little Princess, which we talked about last time. It's similar to that in like, well, we're showing that they have politicians and presidents and airports, so that's great, right? Like, no, let's aim a little higher than that. Come on. Come on.
It's a throwaway thing that actually is like several really great movies have been made exploring it. In the years since, but
I feel like you could have gotten all the way around that. Like, okay, we've landed in Johannesburg or wherever our hub is, and we were going to fly here, but we're going to have to fly here and parachute in because of reasons. Okay, boom, we're done.
Oh yeah. It's 5 minutes. That whole thing can be condensed down to 5 minutes, and then you give that extra 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's left over to the end of the movie, to the climax.
Else. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Or maybe we give it to the male and female lead hooking up.
Right.
Actually, no, I'm fine that they didn't.
No, yeah. That's one thing I wrote because it's extremely odd for the 90s to have a male and female lead who never have any.
Not even
like
tension,
there's like
really.
one moment where I think she kind of looks at him sort of babying Amy, and there's kind of that moment of like, oh, actually, but that it never goes anywhere.
Right. Well, especially since Charlie at the beginning is she specifies several times ex-fiance and doesn't even say like, oh, it's complicated or, oh, we live together. Like there's none of that. So there's no hope there.
Right.
Which you feel like is setting her up for pairing with him.
Yeah, and they just don't do it, which is
fine by me.
Which is great.
Because
Yeah,
that trope is tiresome. Also because this actor, Dylan Walsh, I know him mostly from Nip Tuck.
Okay.
Did you ever watch that?
No, I did
not. Boy. It's just a cavalcade of terrible people being terrible.
Oh, cool.
He's a plastic surgeon who's just both spineless and a douchebag, which is a rare combination, I have to say, but he's sort of gross and awful. And so I watched the whole thing. That was when I realized what hate watching was. I was like, I hate this show and all these characters and the actors, but I can't stop.
Yes.
That was that. So anyway, I associate him with whoever his character was on Nip Tuck. So I don't want to see him get together with anybody. Certainly not the glorious Laura Linney.
Right.
She deserves better.
Yes, and I also like that they didn't do anything between Monroe and Dr. Ross, the Ernie Hudson character, because he also is quite respects her for her capable, like every male in this movie acknowledges how capable she is and admires it, and nobody is like.
Which is how you know it's fiction. She's never sexually harassed.
Right, exactly.
Except by the gorilla.
Right. Well, and by the one guard in Delroy's mansion touches her hair, and she elbows him in the
and he
dick.
Goes down. Yeah, that was pretty.
And he's like, I like that. You surprised him. Yeah. Like even the warlord is like, I admire your tenaciousness, lady.
Yeah, I feel like warlords respecting women's bodily autonomy, not common.
Probably not. Yes.
So,
but that's, that's one of those things like, extra marks for that, because you don't have to worry about this romance. You don't have to keep track of it. You don't have to ask silly questions like, why are these people becoming affectionate during a time of crisis or any of that stuff.
Right.
It's just you keep it simple. You have a story to tell. Every character has their own motivation and they all go after it. And you imagine at the end of this movie, the ones that survive just go their separate ways.
Yeah.
That's it. Which is great.
They have drinks together every 5 years and they say, man, that was some shit, right? Yep. Okay. Well, bye now.
Remember those gorillas?
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of gorillas though.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned for Amy and her well-being.
Why?
Because now I know very little about the process of taking animals from captivity and putting them back in the wild. But I imagine there's a transition period.
Right. Well, it would seem that Dr. Peter also doesn't seem to know a lot about it.
This is
what if we just fly her to the Congo and just drop her off?
She'll find somebody, right? I mean, like, this is somebody with the she's not been she doesn't know any. Well, I don't know how old she was when she was taken from the Congo in the first place, but she doesn't have relationships with any of the gorillas there. She doesn't know how to fight. She doesn't know how to forage. She doesn't anything. And they don't even put like a tracker on her to be like, we want to see how she integrates. It's just like, okay, go home. You're fine.
Well,
like,
you wonder what they would have done had things not gone the way they went, maybe.
I mean, I think you put the tracker on her from the minute you leave California. Because, like they're in the tent. So they share a tent, which is, I don't want to share a tent with a gorilla, but okay. And he wakes up and she's just gone.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, she's gone.
She knows how to operate zippers.
Yes.
So this is a concern that you should have addressed earlier. But put a tracker on her so if she gets lost, you can find her. So I'm concerned about Amy. I'm gonna be worried now about the fate of a fictional gorilla.
Yes, yeah. Well, and that's the funny thing. Like the one thing that the movie tries to sell you like on an emotional level is this like there's this scene where they first see the gorillas and Amy tries to sign to them and she's like, "Hey gorillas, I'm Amy. Yeah, hello." And they of course just turn their backs on her. And there's this moment where Peter looks at her and she's looking sad and there's this like she just doesn't and even Dr. Ross I think says she doesn't fit anywhere.
And
because
then,
she's been so accustomed to
she's been domesticated, and then boom, later it's fine. You kind of wonder, was there a deleted small scene where the good wild gorillas saw her kicking ass with the evil gorillas, and we're like, okay, she's fine, she'll
maybe
work. We can make it happen.
Think,
I don't know.
I hope it's expanded upon in the book. I mean, she, as the climax is really going down, she goes off and meets up with the good gorillas and then returns to save Peter and then goes back with the gorillas. So you wonder, like in the intervening time, was she accepted by the good gorillas? Did she rediscover her instincts when she had to ferociously defend Peter?
Yeah.
Like there's again, that 15 minutes there could have been a conversation between Peter and Amy where she says she knows she's wild now. She knows her instincts and she's ready to go. And she goes.
Isn't it in the Planet of the Apes where it was Caesar, that when the newer versions, they've taught Caesar to do all these things, and then at the end he's like, Caesar is home, and he just goes off with the apes and the wilds. Am I making this up?
That sounds right.
Okay.
If you're talking about the first one, it's been so long since I saw the first of the new Planet of the Apes, Rise of whatever it is.
There's a couple of, it's not even scenes, just more like shots where she's hanging out with the native gorillas, and they're basically all just sunning themselves on a hillside. And it reminded me of this part in Midsummer where they're tripping.
Oh yeah. They're all just out there.
They were doing gorilla drugs together, and they were tripping, and now they're bonded, and so now it's fine. So it was drugs that undid the effects of domestication. Now she's back.
These mushrooms.
We went back to our roots, man. It's fine. That's what a stone gorilla sounds like, in case you were wondering.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of the gorillas, I think this is one of the things where the movie kind of lets itself down in some cases with the gorilla animatronics. They're really good, but not quite good enough. This was Stan Winston, who is hot off of Jurassic Park. And my understanding is from some interviews that I watched coming into this. So this is also produced by Kathleen Kennedy, who was Amblin, who produced Jurassic Park, who then went on to Disney and all these other things. And I think they brought Winston on, and he fully expected to be able to do CGI gorillas. This is what I, kind of what I gleaned from some interviews, and it didn't work. They realized that the difference between reptile skin and believable hair turns out it was like about 20 years away because they really didn't get that right until that first Planet of the Apes movie, the first Rise of the Planet of the Apes or whatever, the first one with Caesar. It was very good in King Kong, the Peter Jackson King Kong, but he was a large character. He wasn't expected to do a lot of emoting like Amy and a lot of close-up interaction like Amy. But yeah, I mean, it would be another 20 years before they really got the hair and the everything right to do a full CGI ape. But so they ended up having to go the full animatronic route. Lady, small, she was maybe an acrobat or a contortionist, I can't remember, in the Amy suit. All of the gorillas, they're all animatronic, of course, suits and all the people on little knuckle stilts and stuff.
They're like the Wheelers.
Yeah, really, yeah. But so Amy is not as good as she needs to be, but she's still great. Like as an animatronic, there's only so far you can take them, and she's no doubt she was cutting edge for the time.
Oh yeah,
and she does great. And she's believable, but there's never a time you look at her and think she's a real ape. Like you always think I always think that's the suit. Ape.
Yeah, I think the first scene that we had with her, the very first one where she's painting, and I was like, "What is this? This is awful." I mean,
Yeah.
it reminded me of like when ET is dressed up in a dress and hat. I mean,
Right. She's
it
like
was
wearing a smock.
yeah, and maybe it was that did it more than anything else, but it just looked really bad. And later it got better, but there also were times when I was like, "Hey, at the end of Trading Places when they lock the bad stockbroker guy in a cage in a gorilla suit and send him off to Africa? It looks like that one. Like it just looked kind of
It's just rough in the early going. I think the more you get attached to the character, the less you mind it.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, the exaggerated silver guard gorillas are all amazing.
Oh, they were terrifying.
They're right. They're terrifying because they can mess with the features, and they're not trying to adhere to this lifelike thing. These are creatures that don't exist, so they can go a little more almost cartoonish. It's not cartoonish, but a little more over the top.
It's a little uncanny valley.
Yeah, with the design,
which is they're supposed to be if they're crossbred with humans.
The thing about real gorillas is you can't go over the top with the emoting, unless you're doing a display, a dominance display or something. The silver gorillas are always angry and always snarling, and they have that great animatronic lip snarl going on, and they have these jagged, rotten teeth, and they are 100% believable. And there's never a time where I felt like they didn't read as not only real creatures in the sense they didn't read as real apes, they read as creatures, and threatening. They always read as threatening.
Oh yeah.
Which is great. Sometimes, the worst thing in a movie like this is to have an animatronic that people are supposed to be scared of, and it's just
funny,
lame and funny. Yeah. And so it's this weird, there's two sides of the coin with it, because the hero animatronics, the good gorillas and Amy are great, but not as good as they need to be. And the evil gorillas are all great and just totally sell what they're trying to sell. So it's a crazy, the special effects are just, it's a crazy split between, but again, all of that stuff was still great, but it just didn't do what it needed to do. Sometimes bad special effects can do what you need them to do, and sometimes good special effects miss the mark. And I think these are good special effects that just miss the mark.
Technically good, but artistically, or vice versa.
Yeah. And this movie also, speaking of special effects, like not just the animatronics and the creature effects, this is one of those movies that you see it, and it's the climax of this movie takes place in the city of Zinj. They find it. That's when they encounter the evil apes who are the guards,
because they find the diamonds, and Tim Curry can't resist them, and he's promptly attacked.
He's picking up the diamonds. He gets killed. Everybody but our primary three characters, Peter, Monroe, and Dr. Ross, all get killed. They're the last three to survive. And as they're going through the climax, Laura Linney gets her badass moment where she makes the laser gun. She loads one of the diamonds into the laser and just starts slicing.
That's how many of these evil gorillas meet their end, is they are sliced up with a diamond laser. Like, I did not see that coming.
Just completely disemboweled. There's bodies cut in half with the guts spilling out, just lying around. She's just sweeping this laser through groups of them, like chopping off arms and heads and stuff.
I kind of would have thought the laser would have had more of a kick. But evidently in the CIA, they train you on lasers too.
100%. 100%. And so, all of that's going on. And then the volcano that this diamond mine, I guess this is how the special diamonds get made, because they're so close to a heat source that can, make them perfect or whatever. The volcano starts erupting, and there's all this lava and there's all this upheaval, and the ground starts shifting, and, big craggy rocks start pushing up out of the ground, and it's all practical. And it's just amazing.
Wow.
All this stuff, you've got, moments where there are chasms that are forming. Some of it's done with miniatures, no doubt. But there are times with the actors where you're seeing a bit of the earth rise up with the actor hanging from it or standing on it, and a lot of that's can be done with camera tricks and stuff. But the scale of the climax, having watched it now, 2 or 3 times, it's amazing, and it's the kind of thing that makes me appreciate this sort of filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
That just this would be a CGI spectacular, excuse me, and it would probably be more spectacular a climax than this is, although this is a super spectacular climax.
Mm-hmm.
But it would all be CGI, and it would all be, it would all have that look to it, that uncanny look of, you know, people and objects being a little bit lighter than they should be, and, you know, all these different things. And it made me miss that, like knowing that you could do this climax modern day for an eighth of the price, probably. Well, no, CGI is expensive, half the price probably, than doing it real with hydraulics and all these moving platforms. But it just wouldn't look as good, and it wouldn't feel as authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something that's been lost with that rise of technology and the losing of the animatronic, you know, the great animatronics. And there are directors who are trying to bring that stuff back, but losing that sort of stuff, it really hit home watching this movie, going like, watching some of that stuff and going, that's just, they just did that for real. Like they just, you know, they just put these guys over a pit, sure, not a deep pit, and had them crawl across a log. And a lot of the fire and stuff's added in post, sure. But like they did all that. That was for real. That wasn't somebody crawling across a green floor.
Yeah.
You know, they shot that.
Yeah.
And you know, some of the other stuff of all of the plane stunts, you know, even though I'm sure it's none of your actors jumping out of the plane in the scene where they have to bail out, it's still a bunch of boxes of equipment and real people jumping out of a plane, and they're followed down and you see them, and it's, you know, it's, it just, that was one of the things that stuck with me about this movie, is how many outrageous special effects they did. And this was also something that they really took pride in the Indiana Jones movies, and doing all that stuff as real as they could. You know, the falling out of the plane in Temple of Doom, and they fall out of the plane on the life raft. You know, doing stuff like that. Like that was all they did. You know, they did it as real as they could. Yeah, and it made me just realize, like, oh man, you know, like if they remade this movie today, like it would lose so much of its charm, even in the cases where the special effects weren't as good as they needed to be.
Yeah. There is, yeah, when you look back at an art that technology has changed irrevocably, there are definitely things that I look back where technology has taken over and I don't have to do it manually anymore. And I think, oh, thank God, because I hated doing it by hand, whatever it was. And there are other things where you think, oh, well, it's much easier now, but that was a beautiful art. And we did kind of lose some sort of personal touch. Like the one that I always learned about in school was newspapers and books and everything used to be set by hand. Like, you know, they do one letter at a time. And that's a lot of the terminology that you talk about with publishing comes from that stuff. Yeah. Or, you know, like literally, apparently, if, you know, Facebook fun facts are true, that's why we say uppercase and lowercase, because the capital letters were in one case of right. type, and the different cases, you know, who knows?
Yeah.
Is it much easier? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Is there something that we lost? Yeah, that too. And it's lately, in last like month or so, between Chat GP, so AI writing, and then all these AI art programs coming up, there's a lot of hand wringing about what happens if we let computers take over and do all this stuff for us. And would you produce a lot of good work? Yes. Would there be something lost? Also, yes. Yeah. And would there be some other good work that you lost out on experiencing if you leave it to computers to do? Like, you know, it's a little, when you're at this point, when you're looking back at what technology could do now versus what people could do without technology 20 years ago, you think, oh my gosh, what are we not going to get if we keep going down this path? Anyway, that's my philosophical moment for the day.
And you come from a field where it's easy to see that. You know, you were trained, you were even kind of trained in your field, newspaper, that sort of thing, sort of in the middle of that transition. Because by the time you were being trained, there was already an acknowledgement of that digital was coming, and you guys weren't necessarily doing things the old way, you know, certainly with the actually setting the letters, you definitely weren't.
No, we weren't.
But you know, you were still doing things much more analog than 5 years later even.
Oh, yeah. And my professors insisted that we learn how to do things like, use a pike pole and measure an image and resize it and this and that. And a lot of us were grumbling, why, we're not going to need to know this. Because in our heads, we were all going to go to big fancy newsrooms that did everything the best way. Not true for all of us. And I went to a mid-sized newsroom. We did use some of that stuff. But within a couple years, it was all gone.
Yeah.
And it's similar to, I don't know, like when you're learning math. Even when you're doing complicated equations, you still need to know how to do the arithmetic that got you there. You can appreciate what you're doing, and so you understand it more fully. And so it's a little concerning to think about just saying goodbye to all the practical stuff. But that's I don't know.
Well, and I think there has been a push in some areas to return to analog ways or more analog ways. It's easy to point out things like vinyl. And stuff like that, people wanting physical media, whether it's movies or TV, like VHS collecting is huge right now.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, it amongst a certain group
of all the types,
people.
VHS seems like, doesn't it degrade really fast?
It does, but I think with so many things, there's an authenticity to VHS that you lose with DVD. Which, is the last. I think people kind of get into this idea of sort of collecting the last thing that was, that felt authentic, so VHS or records, because even though cassettes have an authenticity to them, vinyl feels even closer and more authentic, like putting the needle down, the maintenance that you need to do to keep your needle clean and to balance your arm and, to keep your player level. And that is just, it's not pop a tape in and hit play.
Well, that's interesting. I would think of VHS and cassettes as similar, because your average person can both consume and create on a VHS or a cassette. And then vinyl is, I don't know, like film strips or something. But
yeah, I wonder with VHS if it's just that was the first format. Like before that, nobody was getting 35 millimeter prints of movies from the theater and playing them at home. I mean, the ultra wealthy probably were, but that was never a thing. So in the same way that vinyl was kind of the first format that sort of brought music into the home, VHS was the first format that kind of brought it. So even though cassettes and VHS, audio cassettes and VHS tapes are kind of analogous, VHS has more authenticity because it was kind of the first, thing that anybody got, So yeah, I don't know, but I think there is a push in a lot of areas, the things that I'm interested in, video games, people have really over the last 10 years, especially really gotten back into collecting the old physical consoles and the physical games, even though you can go on the internet right now. In fact, I have multiple systems where I have every Nintendo game, every Super Nintendo game, every Genesis game, every whatever, Atari game. But there are people who want to physically collect every Nintendo game or Genesis game or Atari game.
They want to have to blow into the cartridge.
Yes, exactly. Because that's really it. Like there's an experience that's lost. Also playing it on an old television, like all of these things, like I can play music digitally, but something is lost from playing it on a vinyl. I can play Super Mario Brothers digitally, but there's something lost not playing it on the original system on a CRT television,
Yeah. Well, you were saying that there's a movement in movies to go back to practical effects. Is that related to, I feel like this is now 15, 20 or more years ago, there was like, it was called Swedish 95 or something. It was a group of filmmakers who were trying to go back to...
That sounds familiar.
The same kind of thing. So I wonder if this is cyclical, like every so often, a new generation of makers in whatever field is like, we're going to go back to basics and the real stuff and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just a set of filmmakers who are rejecting it because it's not the aesthetic that they want to emulate. Like you mentioned, Midsummer, Ari Aster, Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino has always been this way. So many of these up and coming directors and established, directors who were influenced by 70s and 80s movies.
Mm-hmm.
You even have somebody like Phil Tippett, who made a lot of those movies. He was in special effects. He did a lot of the animatronic and stop motion effects in movies in the 80s and 90s for Industrial Light and Magic, I believe. He recently released a full stop motion horror movie called Mad God. Just that kind of thing, that kind of going back to this more personal way of filmmaking. Several filmmakers recently making movies on film instead of digital, even though you can make a digital movie and you can do film effects on it to make it look like it was made. It's still not, you're still missing something.
Yeah.
So I think there's always going to be that. There was probably somebody in the 70s who was playing music off of wax cylinders and insisting it was the best way to experience anything.
There have always been hipsters. There will always be hipsters.
But Congo,
back to what we were talking about.
That was a big path to go down.
Yeah.
I think there's not really a whole lot more to say. I mean, this was sort of a stumble for Crichton. He was coming off of a lot of success, Jurassic Park, obviously the year before, but even other movies, Andromeda Strain, which was based on a novel that he wrote, Westworld, which I believe he either wrote the screenplay or it was based on one of his books. I can't remember if it was a book or not. It didn't really, they didn't miss a beat though. They were just like, we're going to ride the Crichton monster till the wheels fall off.
Yeah, there was a lot of Crichton crammed into a couple of years because all this, and he was doing ER too.
Right, he did ER. Yeah, and so this is where it goes. 93 Jurassic Park. Then you've got Rising Sun, which was a Sean Connery. Was that a Sean Connery Wesley Snipes movie?
I don't know.
Anyway, then you've got Disclosure, which is a movie based on one of his novels.
Is that the Demi Moore and?
It was the Basic Instinct movie.
Yeah.
Then you got then in 95 you get Congo. A year later, Twister.
Oh boy!
Again, this is all based on his stuff, and or he wrote it straight up, wrote the movie or the Sphere, which is I feel like underappreciated movie with Dustin Hoffman and Sharon Stone in it. The 13th Warrior with Antonio Banderas, Timeline, the Jurassic Park sequels, they just, and then, ER, of course, for many, many years. They kept an Andromeda Strain has been made and remade. They kept riding the train, and Westworld, of course, there's a new Westworld series. They kept riding that train, and I don't think this one being basically a box office flop and kind of a failure, they were just like, nope, that's fine. Just keep it going. And I think there are other writers of lesser stature who may have been derailed by that. But by the time this came along, he was 20 years into, a career. Andromeda Strain was in the early 70s.
Well, yeah. Once you've written enough books, you're like, well, that one didn't work. Let's try the next one.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure Paramount or whoever had a 5-picture deal with Crichton to turn various novels into movies. And there are some hit and miss. Sphere people would say Sphere's a hit and miss. I don't think Disclosure did particularly well as like a Basic Instinct alike. So, everyone's not a hit, but I think he lined up a bunch of really interesting movies over the course of the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And I've never read any of his books. I've heard things that they all go quite a bit farther than the movies end up being willing to go.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Things like the end of Jurassic Park, the raptors are trying to row a boat off the island.
I think I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
that's terrifying.
Like I said, I guarantee in this movie, there was much more of this near future science fiction stuff and this genetics stuff of the breeding with the humans.
Probably one evil gorilla that was left.
Somehow he's there, like he gets the laser at the end or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, like I feel like he made a name for himself, and I have to say I don't know if he's still alive.
I don't know either.
If he's dead, his estate needs to take some notes from the Clance estate, because Tom Clancy's estate has been really just
cranking them out.
Milking that
still.
name, and I don't see the Crichton name nearly enough.
That's true. Yeah, we were just talking about the whole Jack Ryan verse because I've been watching the new season of the Jack Ryan show on Amazon, and yeah, I'm sure Clancy's written other books besides the Jack Ryan ones, right?
Yeah.
But are they all fairly similar in that same world?
Yeah, it's all sort of espionage. Like, there's a chain of video games called Rainbow Six that bears his name, and Ghost Recon. It's all about military operations and CIA adjacent. And Black Ops. And Crichton, sorry, just to intervene, Crichton died at 66 in 2008.
Oh dear, wow, that's young. Jeez.
Yes.
Well, there you go. He didn't have a good estate attorney or IP or something like that. Well, and that's something that's impressive about this because everything in the Clancy verse is very similar. We were talking about Stephen King, who I have experienced as somebody with kind of a diverse range, but you said everything it's not as diverse as you would think. But this is, I mean, like hospital, dinosaurs, gorillas. What Andromeda strain is a virus. He kind of has a wheelhouse.
And when I was saying with Stephen King, it was partially joking, but the joke for me is that every time Stephen King makes a cool original character, it always ends up being an interdimensional spider in the end. Like they see the true face of Pennywise, and it's a spider from another dimension that eats souls.
In Dreamcatcher, that's him, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't
that's some kind of interdimensional spider beast.
That was such a bummer. I was like, wait, what?
Langoliers, Tommy knockers. It's always. Even Randall Flagg from The Stand is somehow related to Pennywise, and he's some kind of, hate demon or something. It's always, and then all of that is related back to the Bachman stuff, the Dark Tower stuff. It's all interconnected. And on the, it's great that he's kind of embraced it, and he has this whole sort of extended universe of characters and things. But yeah, that's just my joke with him is that anytime, and it's true to an extent. Every time he comes up with something, it just ends up being an interdimensional spider monster at the end. Like, now we see the true face of the Tommy knockers or whatever, the Langoliers. They're interdimensional space spiders.
And this is connected to Congo because Tim Curry, Pennywise, and Congo.
Exactly.
There we go.
That's how this is all connected.
We're not off topic.
No. We're never off topic.
Not at all.
But speaking of that, we've gone way too long, so we should go ahead and wrap it up. Congo.
Yep.
Watch it. It's great. What's your 30-second Congo thought? Should people watch it? Is it worth a damn?
Oh gosh.
Any redeeming value?
Watch it. So watch it for the cameos. Watch it for Delroy Lindo and Laura Linney being a badass,
and for the Tim Curry, moments. And for Ernie Hudson's iffy English accent.
And if they ever want to remake this or have an extended verse, I'm saying call Idris Elba because he's like tailor made for that. 100%. He if he can punch out a lion, he can handle killer gorillas.
Yeah, and we bring Ernie Hudson back to play the Delroy Lindo role.
Yes.
Of the warlord or something.
That would have been great.
As a nod.
Yes. Well, folks, we would love to know what you think about this or about any of the topics that we've discussed, really. You can get in touch with us a couple different ways. You can reach us by email or find us on Twitter or Facebook. Our handle is the same for all three. It's YSMY Podcast, YSMY for You Show Me Yours. You can send us an email at gmail.com or DM us on Twitter or Facebook. Or on those last two, you can check our feeds for links to all of our new episodes when they come up, and sometimes we just post fun things related to the episodes or the movies that we think are interesting, and we'd love to know your thoughts on them. If you are not a Facebook or Twitter person and you want to get your episodes right from the source, you can find us on most of your major podcast providers, specifically Apple Podcasts. And while you're there, we would love it if you would rate, review, and subscribe. If you subscribe, it means you get the latest episodes right in your queue. And if you rate and review, it moves us up the charts and helps other people learn about us. We have new episodes every other Wednesday. So 2 weeks from today, no matter when you're listening, there will be a new episode for you. And in 2 weeks, I am hosting and I am going to show Dave Swing Kids. How have I not shown him this before? I don't know. We're talking Robert Sean Leonard, Christian Bale, swing music in Nazi Germany. It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
You've just told me 1,000% more than I knew about that movie.
You Really?
10 seconds ago.
Okay, I'm surprised that you had not come across this, but okay. Well, we will talk about swing kids and swing music and defeating Nazism with dance in 2 weeks. Till then, this has been You Show Me Yours. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. The You Show Me Yours theme song is Uplifting Electronic Indie by Winnie the Moog from filmmusic.io.
I have to say, when you talk about a voice box that gives us the thoughts of a primate, I've learned about the fan base behind Megan, about the killer robot.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining those two intertwined. So I'm gonna expect a Megan twist now.
Okay.
Where maybe the evil gorillas turn into like Megans? I don't know.
You at this point you already know, and we're about to go back to the you that knows and see. Wow, this cat has found the loudest cellophane wrapper possible.
Yes.
And so we'll see. So let's get back to the actual show here.
Okay, we'll see you soon. Bye.
Yeah.